This is going to be fun. Coming up, we're taking the time machine back to the 80s, and we're going on a shopping spree at the record store. Remember those shopping sprees you could win in the 80s where you could fit everything into a cart in 5 minutes? You got to keep it. And we're going to track down the 10 best albums of one of the best years of the decade, including the best song and the best hidden gem from each of these masterpieces we list. And along the way, we get the number one hit that has an inside joke that almost nobody got. Actually references another song from the same album. And then later that song they joked about went to number one and it settled a really stupid argument with a label executive. And then there's a conversation a guitarist heard at a store. And the banter was so entertaining, he wrote it down word for word, and it became a number one hit. But because he used a slur that was said in the real dialogue of the conversation, it's still censored on radio to this day. Plus the record that took 37 years to hit number one, and then a song where a famous outcast got even with all of his bullies with a guitar riff that most shredders could never dream of, and the song that was rejected by multiple female icons, including Stevie Nicks, but then a struggling band's backup vocalist took the challenge and made it their first number one hit. It's all coming up next on Professor of Rock. Hey, music junkies, Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. You know, if you ever sang along to the Love Boat theme when it came on, your TV, you're going to dig this channel with deep musical nostalgia. And that takes me back. Make sure to subscribe below right now. Click the white button. I know you'll find something to like on this channel. Also, check out our podcast on Apple and on Spotify and rate us there. We're going to fire up the time machine now and head back to the 80s to celebrate a truly great year in music. So Reagan was our president. It was a turning point in the Cold War between the superpowers of the USA and the USSR. And there was a worldwide effort to feed the world through a musical event called Live Aid. Some of the greatest albums of the rock era came out that year. I'm talking about 1985. So as we get through these iconic albums, I'm going to give you the big hit from each one, my pick for the best song, and the best hidden gem. Let's get into it. Coming in at number 10, it's an album from a band that was very much still part of the underground, but by the end of the decade, into the 90s, they become the biggest band in America, rock band that is. We begin with REM's Fables of the Reconstruction at number 10. Fables of the Reconstruction has the deep substance that really attracted me to REM in the first place. But that album was a little more focused on social roots and honest introspection than the previous REM material. The songwriting on Fables is particularly poetic and evocative. Michael Stipe's lyrics delve into themes of Southern identity, history, and spirituality, often using imagery centered in the American South. The singles were Can't Get There From Here, Driver 8, and Wendell G. To me, the best song on Fables is the second single from the record, Driver 8. I just love it. Michael Stipe has mentioned that he was fascinated by the idea of trains as symbols of movement, connection, and sometimes escape. Of course, a lot of great rock songs have been based on trains. But he was specifically singing about the Southern Crescent passenger train operated by the Southern Railroad. I definitely feel that freedom and sense of adventure when I listen to Driver 8, and I love Peter Buck's guitar riff on that. I love that part, and I love the Still a Ways Away. Great song. Now, the hidden gem off Fables is definitely Life and How to Live It. That song is based on the true story of Brev Mecca's a schizophrenic man from Athens who went to extraordinary lengths to split his world into two separate realities. I remember reading about this as a kid in the magazine. He literally divided his home into two sides, each filled with its own distinct furniture, books, clothing, even pets, creating a life where two completely different worlds existed side by side. The song definitely captures the surreal, fragmented experience of mental illness, exploring themes of perception, reality, and the human desire for order amidst all the chaos. It's a haunting reflection on the complexity of the mind and the lengths we go to find stability when everything just feels All right, at number 9, I gotta go with John Cougar Mellencamp's epic Scarecrow. Now, this was the album before he dumped the Cougar from his name for good. Remember, he was Johnny Cougar, John Cougar Mellencamp, and John Mellencamp. How would you like to be called Johnny Cougar if your name was John Mellencamp? Anyway, Mellencamp spent most of the 80s being called a half-pint Springsteen by a lot of critics. But Scarecrow shows he was more than a worthy opponent of the boss. The singles were perfect. You had A Lonely Old Night, Small Town, both hitting number 6.
It's a lonely old night. My parents live in the same small town.
There's Rumble Seat hitting number 28 and Rain on the Scarecrow at number 21. Of course, the biggest hit, ROCK in the USA at number 2. That gave him 5 hits for one album. Speaking of which, it's hard to resist listing ROCK in the USA as the best cut on Scarecrow. The song's just too anthemic and infectious. It's just one of the best of the decade, not just the album. John Mellencamp was inspired to write ROCK in the USA as a commentary on the commercialization and superficiality of the American music industry, and really the pop culture at that time. In the late 80s, into the early 90s, John was growing increasingly frustrated with how rock and roll had become more about image and money and manufactured stars and about authentic expression and the roots of American music. ROCK in the USA was John's way of asserting that true rock and roll that came out in the 60s was about honesty and hard work and real people, staying connected to the real America, values that he felt were being overshadowed by really the glitz and the glamour of the industry. In fact, he name-checked a ton of 60s acts, from the Young Rascals to Martha and the Vandellas, and I've actually had a chance to ask all of them about this. Pretty cool. But he had his band play over 100 cover songs from the 60s before they even started writing on this album, to get in the mode, and it definitely worked. On an album full of great tracks, the less celebrated gem here is Rain on the Scarecrow. Mellencamp composed Rain on the Scarecrow out of his deep concern that the Seymour, Indiana of his youth, representing the hardworking, honest farmers and small-town folks, was slipping away, slipping into alienation and poverty. He was worried that people like his grandparents were losing hope as the American economy grew more cutthroat and unforgiving.
97 families who lost 97 farms.
This song reflects his fears about the decline of rural communities and also the vanishing of farmland and the crushing impact of economic hardship on everyday Americans who'd always believed the hard work and perseverance would get them through. And he was seeing the American dream rotting away. Great album, Scarecrow. Coming up next on our countdown of the top 10 albums of 85, I've got the elusive Kate Bush and her opus, Hounds of Love. No doubt about it. Man, Kate Bush is one of the most innovative artists of the rock era. No matter what you think of her, she's amazing. For Hounds of Love, she had a bold vision in mind here. The album's actually divided into 2 parts. There's Hounds of Love and the Ninth Wave, creating a conceptual journey. The first part explores themes of love, obsession, and emotional vulnerability, while the second is a haunting suite about survival and the power of the subconscious. It's actually inspired by the ocean and fears of drowning. Kate Bush. The album had 4 singles, including Running Up That Hill, Cloud Busting, the title track, and The Big Sky.
Of love.
You're probably not going to be surprised that my pick for the best song on Hounds of Love is Running Up That Hill. It's a great song. It's a track about making a gender role reversal deal with God. It was Kate's only top 40 chart hit in the US, peaking at number 30. And then, of course, the song had a pop cultural renaissance in 2012 when it was used as a motivational theme for the Summer Olympics. Then again in 2022 when it was the music for the riveting scenes in Stranger Things on Netflix. It took only 37 years for it to hit number one. But I gotta tell you, the true gem from Hounds of Love is Cloud Busting. It's an opus, man. Kate wrote Cloud Busting around her fascination with the life and work of Wilhelm Reich, a controversial scientist and psychoanalyst. Very interesting. The song narrates the story of Reich's experiments with cloudbusters, devices that he believed could influence weather by manipulating atmospheric energy. The lyrics evoke the idea of hope and faith, how Reich's belief in his technology was a symbol of the possibility of changing the world and overcoming oppression. And I also love the way Kate turned the narrative into an unbreakable bond between a daughter and her father.
I won't forget.
Placing at number 7 on the top 10 85 countdown, I've got the debut solo LP by Sting, Dream of the Blue Turtles. The hit album had some big ones, including the top 5, If You Love Somebody, Set Them Free, which he actually wrote as a more uplifting antidote to the stalker anthem, Every Breath You Take. As well as Love is a Seventh Wave, that hit number 17. Fortress Around Your Heart hit number 8, and Russians hit number 17. Now, the musicianship on the Dream of the Blue Turtles was stellar, incredible. The album earned Grammy nominations for Best Male Pop Vocal Performance, Best Engineer Recording. There was also Best Jazz Instrumental Performance and Album of the Year. Sting explained that the title was meant to capture a mood of dreaming about a better, more peaceful world, but it did come from a real nightmare that he had about enormous blue turtles, kind of monster-like. But it was an optimistic yet contemplative vision that really runs through the album's lyrics and musical style. It's a poetic way of expressing hope and imagination in the face of life's challenges. It was a path Sting was excited to embark on after breaking away from the Police. My pick for the best song on the album, and it's tough because there's so many great ones, it's got to be Fortress Around Your Heart. Now, Sting wrote Fortress when he was reeling after the collapse of his first marriage. It was a painful feeling that inspired many of his greatest hits, if you go back. Now, on Fortress, Sting was reflecting on emotional barriers, how people sometimes build walls around themselves to avoid vulnerability. But in doing so, they also block out love and connection. In other words, they become too closed in and they miss out on something that could be incredible for them. This was also written as an antidote song to the spiteful Police hit Wrapped Around Your Finger, so there's that. The song not only hit number 8 on the Hot 100, but it went to number 1 on the rock charts. My hidden gem for the Dream of the Blue Turtles, one I find incredibly moving, is Children's Crusade. Powerful song that relates to the destruction of the younger generation of World War I, and that brings it up to modern times. Children's Crusade is where Sting explores the heartbreaking irony of children being sent to fight in wars under the banner of honor and patriotism, but ultimately suffering the devastating consequences that last for generations. The song raises questions about innocence, loss, and the moral failures of society that allows such exploitation to happen. It seems to happen all the time. Grabbing the number 6 position on the countdown of the top 10 of 85, I've got Heart's self-titled album that was a triumphant comeback for the band. This album marked a pivotal moment for the career of Ann and Nancy Wilson, progressing from their earlier hard rock and folk rock roots into a more polished mainstream rock and pop sound. The group embraced synthesizers, also catchy hooks, and a sleek production style, which helped their music reach a broader audience without losing their emotional edge, though, and that's the key. In essence, the album accentuated what made Ann and Nancy such incredible talents in the first place. This album was huge. It went to number 1. It had 4 top 10 hits, including Heart's first number 1 hit, These Dreams. That one was written by Elton John's lyricist Bernie Taupin and Martin Page. It was actually written for Stevie Nicks at first. She turned it down, rejected it. Then it was offered to Kim Carnes, who shunned it. There were a couple more. And even when Hart listened to it, the vocal went to guitarist and secondary vocalist Nancy instead of Ann, who's the lead. As the story goes, Nancy had a nasty cold when she first recorded her vocals, so they went in later when she was feeling better to re-record it. But their producer loved the raspy voice from her so much from the cold, they ended up keeping it, and it made it a smash. The other hits were Never, Nothing at All, and my pick for the best song from the record, What About Love? This song was actually a cover from an original version recorded in 1982 by the band Toronto. It was written by the Canadian trio Brian Allen, Sharon Alton, and Jim Valance. Of course, produced and co-wrote a lot of Bryan Adams stuff. Don't you want someone to care about you? Ann Wilson's vocal on What About Love was so dynamic, it was as if the song was created just for her. Of course, I have to note that the big chorus on What About Love was fattened up by the background vocals by some incredible players. Mickey Thomas, one of the most underrated vocalists of all time. Grace Slick and Hart lead guitarist Howard Leese. What About Love landed at number 10 on the Billboard Hot 100 and number 8 in Canada. It also went to number 3 on the mainstream rock tracks chart. The track on Hart's self-titled album that I think deserves a lot more acclaim, my hidden gem pick, is Nothing at All. Written by musical theater composer Mark Miller. It's a song that captures the euphoria of a new romance, and it's a feeling like no other with the way Ann sings it. She nails the vocal, exuding that electrifying human sensation with maybe her best performance in years. Ann's vocal goes perfectly with the song's edgier rock arrangement. Nothing at All was a big hit, though. It went to number 10 on the Billboard Hot 100 and number 6 on the mainstream rock chart, but you just don't hear it on classic rock radio as much. We're into the second half of our top 10 albums of 85 countdown, and knocking on the door of our number 5 spot is The Cure. With a head on the door. Sorry, I had to. Leading into the making of The Head on the Door, Robert Smith was feeling the pressure of creating a record that would advance The Cure commercially without losing the band's brooding darkness. Again, that balance between art and commerce. At the time, Robert Smith felt that the other members of the group, Lowell Tolhurst, the returning Simon Gallup, and new recruits Boris Williams and Pearl Thompson, who's now Pearl Thompson, that they should bear some of that responsibility. He was feeling a lot of that on his shoulders before. He thought the other members had been a little bit too passive in the writing process for the previous albums, so he insisted they contribute more ideas for the record. This led to a more collaborative writing approach, but Robert was still very much the controlling force, of course, that rhymed, even grading the band members' submitted musical ideas. Maybe you can imagine that, Robert Smith giving you an A or an F. Boris Williams certainly stepped up his game on In Between Days. The song that I pick is the best from Head on the Door. That energizing Boris Williams drum intro instantly grabs you and takes you on a thrilling 3-minute cruise. It's just one of the catchiest songs ever. Robert Smith wrote In Between Days about a man facing the consequences of being caught in a love triangle. And In Between Days, it barely cracked the Billboard Hot 100 at number 99, but it really opened the door, so to speak, for the future crossover success of songs like Just Like Heaven and Love Song that would come later. The album also had classics like Close to Me and A Night Like This. But you know what? My deep cut hidden gem from this is 6 Different Ways. Featuring the prominent keyboard work of Lowell Tolhurst, who played the keyboard motif that Robert previously used on the track Swimming Horses. This is when he was helping Susie in the Banshees a year earlier in 1984. Although the lyrics of 6 Different Ways Inside My Heart, if you really think about it, are a little bit gross. This is stranger than I ever thought. Busting in at number 4 in our top 10 albums of 85, I've got Meat is Murder, the second studio album by my favorite band of all time, The Smiths. Smiths lead guitarist Johnny Marr said that the time leading up to Meat is Murder was a real period of youthful pioneering for the band. Now this is kind of interesting, a lot of people don't know this. To help build the album's unique sound, Morrissey actually gave Johnny Marr and Stephen Street his personal copies of BBC sound effects records. They used those to find cool samples and add extra texture to the music. Morrissey kept doing this on later singles and albums, which really helped shape the Smiths' innovative and ahead-of-the-curve sound that people would just marvel at, all other bands. Beyond its focus on animal rights, though, Meat is Murder also boldly explores themes of social inequality, political activism, and human suffering. The whole record challenges complacency and calls for greater awareness and empathy for those who are oppressed or marginalized. I have to remember that Meat is Murder didn't originally have the classic song How Soon Is Now on it, so I can't really count it here. But it has so many other classics like That Joke Isn't Funny Anymore and Well I Wonder. But the greatest song from the record, to me, is the Headmaster Ritual. The lyrics depict the student's feelings of fear, humiliation, and helplessness in the face of authoritarian discipline and bullying. Actually, from Morrissey's past, Morrissey's vivid imagery and emotional lyrics highlight the power, imbalance, and emotional scars left by this treatment. It's a scathing editorial from the very first line. Belligerent ghouls run Manchester schools. And then the line, spineless bastards all. I love it. The song has chords that most guitarists would never even dream of. And Morrissey gets even with the Bullies and his horrible teachers on this classic, so it was a win for everybody. To me, the hidden gem off Meat is Murder is Rush Home Ruffians. It's a rockabilly song that was definitely influenced by Elvis, a song that paints a distressing image of the strife of youth growing up in Manchester. A trip to the fair, a trip to the carnival with Morrissey, I love it. Last night at the fair, by the big wheel generator. I love it. The catchy guitar from Johnny Marr, another rhyme, and the infectious bass groove from Andy Rourke, the late Andy Rourke. It's a sharp contrast to the darker, intense lyrics that Morrissey penned. I love the line, and I'll do my best Morrissey impression here. Scratch my name on your arm with a fountain pen. This means you really love me. And of course, you get Morrissey's yodeling at the end. Who could want anything more? Onward, the countdown of the top 10 albums of 1985. It's Phil Collins' foremost LP, No Jacket Required, at number 3. You know, No Jacket Required by Phil Collins is one of those albums that just makes all the right moves. What really makes it stand out is how it blends catchy pop with a touch of sophistication, those great horns. It's got that perfect mix of radio-friendly tunes and genuine musical craftsmanship. Tracks like Sussudio and One More Night are instantly memorable as the number 1 hits. There's a top 5 smash, Billy Don't You Lose My Number, about the lost art of not losing someone's home number before we had cell phones. But underneath the hooks, you can hear Phil's knack for meticulously crafted, well-produced records and those Phoenix horns. Phil was finally over his divorce from his first wife and made a conscious decision to write more up-tempo, more uplifting tracks than his previous couple albums, which were very dark. With so many great songs to choose from, the track that I selected as the best from No Jacket Required is the final cut on the album, Take Me Home. The song he hired Peter Gabriel, the man he replaced in Genesis as lead singer, to sing the background vocal on. Many people have misunderstood the meaning of Take Me Home, though, thinking it's about a man coming home after being away, which makes sense if you listen to it. But Phil Collins set the record straight. He revealed that the lyrics actually tell the story of a patient in a mental institution. Very interesting if you listen to it again from that perspective. It was the 4th single from No Jacket Required, and it went to number 7 on the Billboard Hot 100. What a smash that was. And actually, Take Me Home is the last song on the original version of No Jacket Required. The CD version has We Said Hello Goodbye, which is one of my favorite Phil songs of all time, but it wasn't on the original album, so there's that. Phil Collins' Roland electronic drum machine kicks off Inside Out, my pick for the hidden gem from No Jacket Required. It's not a very celebrated track, and it should be. It's one of Phil's best ever songs. How the hell did he not put out Inside Out as a single? But the chorus is a liberation and the arrangement a piece of true pop art. Phil shared that he wanted to write a song that captured the feeling of emotional exposure, being vulnerable enough to show what's really inside, even if it's uncomfortable. The music complements the mood with a gentle yet driving rhythm, and the chorus builds with a sense of yearning and release, making Inside Out one of the classic deep cuts of the entire 80s. And really, in 1985, Phil Collins was everywhere. One of the biggest stars in the world, and he looked more like your Uncle Gus. Let's be honest. No Jacket was a moment in the space of a few years where the man was on a Beatle-like run. He had dozens of huge hits in such a short period of time. I mean, he had more hits than about 96% of those who were in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. He sold over 150 million records, some say 200 million. And the rumor is that Jan Wenner, formerly of Rolling Stone and one of the founders of the Rock Hall, has shadow banned Phil from the Hall. Induct him, for hell's sake. The man's a legend. He's an institution. Get it done, especially since Jan Wenner is not in charge of it anymore. Okay, as we get to the bridesmaid position here, I gotta tell you, it was so tough deciding between number one and number two. On any given day, they could swap places. Both of these were perfect albums, and No Jacket's not too far behind. I mean, seriously, 1985, these albums could go against anybody. But at number two, I have the standard bearer for the art of recording albums. I've got Dire Straits and their tour de force, Brothers in Arms, at number two. Brothers in Arms was groundbreaking, in its use of stereo and digital recording technology, delivering a crisp, immersive sound that set new standards for rock albums at the time. The clean, painstaking production by Mark Knopfler and his team made each instrument and vocal stand out with clarity and depth for sure. The album's themes of conflict, war, and economic struggles resonated during the late 80s for sure, with a slew of hit singles, including the number one smash Money for Nothing, the number 7 hit Walk of Life, and the number 19 So Far Away.
That's the way you do it. Money for nothing and your chicks for free. Do the walk of life. Yeah, you do the walk of life. You're so far away from me.
It's a close call, but I gotta go with Money for Nothing as the best song on Brothers in Arms, one of the best riffs ever. One of the coolest things about Money for Nothing is that it didn't come from some big dramatic event or divine inspiration. Instead, it was sparked by some stupid banter between workers who Knopfler would refer to as a couple of meatheads at a department store while they were watching MTV. Actually, it was an electronics store. I've told this story before, but it's really interesting. A little different take here. Mark Knopfler happened to overhear their conversation while he was out shopping for some new audio gear. They didn't know who he was, so he just sat there and listened to him bitch about their jobs and point to the rock stars on MTV, how easy they had it. And he quickly grabbed a piece of paper and a pen and he wrote down what they said, word for word, mind you. They used the other F word to describe the band that was on MTV at the moment. That band was Culture Club, and the two meatheads used a slur to describe him that Knopfler would sing in the lyrics. And this got the song banned, and even to this day, the edited version is the only one they'll ever play on radio. Now, you got to remember, Knopfler was a former journalist and wanted to use the exact conversation that they were having as a real documentarian. He took a casual conversation by two dorks and made a song that MTV used for years.
The way you do it, you play the guitar on the MTV.
He, of course, borrowed Sting's chorus melody from Don't Stand So Close to Me and turned it into I Want My MTV. And when he was in the studio recording it, he thought, man, I wish I could get Sting to record this part. It'd be perfect. Guess who was in the studio right next to him? It was meant to be.
That ain't working, that's the way you do it.
The video became iconic, and of course the rest is history. The sleeper classic on Brothers in Arms is the title and closing track.
Make war on our brothers in arms.
And during the tense days of the Falklands War in 1982, Mark Knopfler found himself deeply affected by the conflict unfolding thousands of miles away. As soldiers faced the brutal realities of war, Mark was inspired to write a song that would capture the somber and emotional toll of such battles. Much like Children's Crusade earlier from Sting,
Through these fields of destruction.
released a few years later as the last single from Brothers in Arms, the title track became a timeless classic, resonating far beyond its original context, speaking to universal themes of brotherhood, loss, and the longing for peace. It's one of those songs that made grown men cry like babies, including me. It was a number 5 single in New Zealand and number 1 in Poland.
Your valleys and your farms.
Now, an album that didn't quite make the top 10 albums of '85 countdown for me, but is very worthy of special recognition. A couple of honorable mentions here. I got Tim by The Replacements, featuring Hold My Life and Kiss Me on the Bus. As well as Mr. Welcome to the Real World. This was a band that had 3 huge hits, including the number 1's Kyrie and Broken Wings. Then they just vanished into thin air. All right, everybody. It's a big moment for us to reveal our pick for the number 1 album of '85, and you probably guessed it by now. At the zenith of the top 10 albums of '85, I've got Songs from the Big Chair by Tears for Fears. Now, the title of the album actually has various meanings, but my favorite is that it's a statement that the band made against critics that didn't like their debut album, The Hurting. How they couldn't like that, I don't understand. One of the most perfect debuts ever. They disregarded their opinions, though, and made the record that they wanted to make with no outside influence, hence the title. The sophomore slump, that was obliterated by TFF. This record has multiple definitive hits from the 80s, including 2 number 1s, Everybody Wants to Rule the World and Shout. And the 2 hits, they're actually connected in a few different ways. Both were the last songs finished on the album. Both were released as back-to-back singles to kick off the album in the US. And both wildly successful, like I said, number 1s. But beyond that, the songs have a hidden lyrical connection as well. An inside joke that Roland wrote into Everybody Wants to Rule the World actually came from a real incident that the duo had. It's actually their A&R man, David Bates. Orzabal, he wrote the line, "So glad we've almost made it. So sad they had to fade it." This was actually a direct shout out to Shout. This line references an argument that Roland and Kurt had with this guy Bates about editing down the length of Shout by 5 seconds. Apparently, to make the song fit for radio play, David Bates wanted them to cut 5 seconds off the single version, because otherwise it would be too long. It's funny, Roland Orzabal and Kurt Smith thought the whole thing was asinine. Said Kurt, and I quote, 5 seconds? You're really telling me it won't be a hit unless we take 5 seconds off this thing. It was that stupid. We said, why can't the radio stations just fade it earlier? It was just this power play. Hence the line, "So sad they had to fade it." There you have it. A Tears for Fears grievance, capture forever in the lyrics of Everybody Wants to Rule the World. Millions of people sing along, most not knowing that they were mocking the music industry in the process. And that's always a good thing. So I'm sure many of you think that I'm going to name Everybody Wants to Rule the World as the best song off of Big Chair. But I'm not. As much as I love that song and I think it's a definitive song of the 80s, I believe the masterpiece of this album is Head Over Heels. Head Over Heels was originally conceived as a slow ballad, but it gradually evolved into a more energetic, layered track with a rich mix of synthesizers, guitars, and drums, something even Brian Wilson would point to and say, that's incredible. The song's instrumentation was heavily influenced by the band's experimentation with new sounds, blending new wave and pop elements to create a vibrant, dynamic atmosphere. Roland said that Head Over Heels is probably the closest that Tears for Fears would ever get to a love song. That's arguable because there's other songs, but Roland commented in an interview included in the 2014 Songs from the Big Chair re-release that Head Over Heels is a love song that kind of goes a bit perverse at the end. Head Over Heels isn't just the best song of Songs from the Big Chair. It's one of the best songs of the 80s, best songs ever. If I had to name my top 20 of all time, I think this would be in there. But I gotta tell you, listening to the single edited version of Head Over Heels, that's like eating dinner without the main course. To get the full effect of how majestic Head Over Heels is, you gotta listen to the album version with Broken coming in immediately after the cold fade out of Head Over Heels. So Head Over Heels rose to number 3 on the Billboard Hot 100, should have been a number 1 hit. It was the second single released off Songs from the Big Chair. And the track that I chose as the dark horse hidden gem from the album has gotta be The Working Hour. It's actually one of my favorite TFF songs as well. The Working Hour is such an amazing deep cut, an example of what made albums so exciting and meaningful and why we need them more now than we ever have. The saxophone playing by Mel Collins and the sax solo by Will Gregory is simply gorgeous musicianship. And Roland Orzabal's lead vocal on the track, maybe his best performance ever. The composition was a collaboration by Roland, drummer Manny Elias, and producer Ian Stanley. And a little known fact, it was actually almost the album title, Tears for Fears, The Working Hour. Man, it was a banner year for music in '85, and I'm really excited to get into the comments about this. One of my favorite years for albums ever. You requested that we talked about the top 10 albums. We hit the top 10 songs of every single year. We're still doing it. I think we've covered 1963 to 91 at this point. But guys, we're going to do the albums because albums are a lost art. We need to keep them alive. What would you like to see next? We're going to get in the 70s, the 60s. What are your favorite years? What do you think about 1985? What are some I left out? Hard to keep it down to 10. Really tough. But we're going to do it because... And it's great to do these because we get to talk about the hidden gems and some of these deep cuts on the albums that never get mentioned. So let's have a great discussion. If you like our content, we invite you to subscribe. We'd love to have you as part of our community. Till next time, 3 chords and the truth, my friends.